Just back today with another character model for really it's for the Marvel Universe, Knight Models, but right now this is Daredevil, and Daredevil has stats, so it can be played in the Spider-Man miniatures game, which is essentially an extension of the Batman miniatures game. So you can use him, and so yeah, so I was planning on painting up the Green Goblin that I had showed in the past, but for whatever reason I just had a desire to paint a good guy just after I just painted a bad guy, and there really wasn't much cleanup or modeling for this particular miniature as compared to the Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin. Just a little bit less involved. Came in less pieces. And so, yeah, he's a monotone color, so I actually struggle a little bit with that. I'll show you just a couple of different angles and things and show it up close. Right now, through the viewfinder, he's looking extremely washed out on top because I have it under a fluorescent light, but I suspect from past experience that you're seeing what I see with the naked eye, that's not the case. But I'll show him up close. Daredevil is a character that was one of my top characters as a kid reading the comics. I quite liked the Daredevil series. I read back issues pretty far back. Not so much to the yellow and black costume that I am familiar with. It was mostly always the red costume, but still pretty far back. I do have some Spider-Man issues that had the Daredevil in the yellow and black costume, and they did at times actually, despite being both good guys, kind of run into each other and have quarrels. Daredevil is a bit more like Batman, and he's a vigilante. Spider-Man is too at times, but I actually think Spider-Man participates with the law a little bit more directly, at least when I read the comic. Depending on when you read it. It seems like they all have had the cops after them too. But he was looking a little, because I did do some highlighting on him, and he was looking a little bright on top without enough definition, and so I initially did some Agrex Earthshade, and prior to doing some of my final highlights, and what I found was that, yeah, like I mentioned, after doing multiple steps of highlights on top, he was getting really bright, but it kind of took away a lot of the depth and definition and through my washes that I did. So I went with an additional, I think it's right here, I did the strong tone instead of the soft tone, and it's not a dip, but it's the inks for Army Painter. I find that personally, when finishing my last steps, if I'm going to do an ink towards the end, that I prefer the Army Painter soft tone and strong tone, depending on the color, more so than my Games Workshop washes. I find those washes, although providing more definition, they're a bit harsher. You can dilute them down with water. This is just all my experience. You can dilute them down with water to make them less harsh and blend a bit differently. But I really do, right out of the bottle, like the Army Painter War Paints inks, strong tone and soft tone. I actually will show you the studio picture. So that's how they did him. I really liked how they did the greens on the top of the concrete. I didn't make mine as pronounced, but I actually borrowed that from them because I actually thought they did a really good job with that. And so I did actually put some green and rust down on that. Mine really just turned it, I think, into more of shades of green rather than like, it's not nearly as pronounced as theirs. But I actually liked it. I thought it was a nice touch that they had on there. Yeah. So one thing I will mention is I watched the Daredevil on Netflix, the first season. Not the whole season, but I started watching it, and I really didn't like it that much. It's actually quite popular, and there are people that I know that like it, and I'm a Marvel fanboy, and so I do like most things Marvel. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Daredevil show I've not been that crazy about, though, to be honest. And I think it's because, well, one, despite the fact that the comic Daredevil is very dark, kind of like Batman again, I found physically watching it to be a little too dark for me. Like the actual set is extremely dark all the time, and you're always looking for something, like, because it's everything's in the dark, and I just found that kind of uncomfortable to watch. And then I just maybe it's because it's the first season or the first episodes, but I just found it just didn't really appeal to me, the action and things, and so yeah, so I don't plan on watching season 2 either. So yeah, so that is it. Just for a little update, I did get an email that my stuff is finally being sent for the Marvel Universe game, the various starters and blisters and templates and things that I bought. A little disappointed because I know there are people that have already gotten their stuff when mine's just being shipped out. But I think that I know it was really popular, and I know that they're kind of just trying to keep their heads above water. I think just trying to get all the stuff out from the release, for the pre-releases that I subscribe to. I think that sometimes when you buy a lot, it almost sets you back more as far as getting it than somebody that maybe just gets a smaller amount. You'd think it'd be opposite, that they'd like really appreciate the big purchase, but I was just kind of suspecting that getting a lot of stuff means that they have to produce like a lot of stuff and have it all ready. So if they needed to either get the templates in that not everybody purchased that I did, or there's certain minis in the sets and things that maybe that's kind of what the delay is a little bit. I'm not really sure. But I am really looking forward to it. I really like these minis so far. I've really enjoyed painting these. In a lot of ways, it's kind of funny. I didn't really think about this till just now, but as a franchise, I love the 40K franchise, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to like pick favorites, but like particularly with cinema and TV, and when it comes to Star Wars and like Star Trek and DC and Marvel and all these things, if I had to pick one, even Lord of the Rings, if I had to pick one to say which one would be like my ultimate favorite out of those sort of major franchises, it would be Marvel. And so the fact that I've had a few years back painting again before I get these is probably a good thing. Like, I'm kind of glad that I'm like, I have lots of room for improvement, don't get me wrong, but I'm kind of glad that I'm not painting these like 3 years ago, just because I don't know, I'm kind of glad, just happy with the way they're coming out, and like I don't want to do like a major disservice to them. And so yeah, I kind of thought about doing another layer of brightness on them, but on this one, but to make even more contrast, but I actually decided against it. I just did that little bit of extra definition just to make sure that it wasn't too washed out, and yeah, and I think that's enough, because he wasn't really bright, like in most of the times anyway. And I know some of the later stuff he became even darker. This is probably more like the classic version when I read it. He was a bit, you know, and I actually think the studio artwork is probably also very much like the classic Red. So, all right. Well, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and talk to you later.